Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick, the heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsome with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Howe, pump fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Howe at the 5, takes the shot. Pinballing off the chains for the touchdown. Showing the toughness for 6. Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right. Throws to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag. Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll it apart. Oh, now he's going to throw it and score! Christian May throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown. May throws it left-handed. Was rolling out on the run and threw it left-handed. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog podcast, coming at you on a Thursday night, which means we are previewing a game for Carolina here. We will be doing that the rest of the season here on Thursday night. There is no more bye weeks for Carolina, so we'll be here every Thursday night talking to you guys, getting you ready for whatever big matchup Carolina has coming their way. On this edition of the podcast, it is Virginia that we will be talking about in the South's oldest rivalry. The 130th edition of the South's oldest rivalry is what we'll be talking about. But before we do that, we do have to get into the fact that Carolina did lose 3 guys, not to the transfer portal, but again, just guys that have stepped away from the team, or been told to step away from the team. We'll talk about that here a little bit more. And then, we'll get into it. We'll hit it hard for the game against Virginia, tell you everything that you need to know about the Cavaliers, tell you about some of the Tar Heel storylines going into this game, give you the keys to the game, and then pick the game at the very end. But as I mentioned, we do have 3 guys that stepped away from the program here this week. All of them came earlier this week on the same exact day. That was on Wednesday when all these guys stepped away from the program. And so, yeah, I mean, we're at a point now where you really start to wonder when you see this many guys stepping away from the team, not officially entering their name into the transfer portal like we've seen some guys do. Now, some of them, I don't know if you're even allowed to say that you're going to enter the transfer portal at this point in the season. I know there are some schools that, of course, are allowed to do that because you do have coaches that have been fired. But I doubt, some of these guys, I don't know what exactly is going to happen to some of these guys, if they're going to end up in the portal, if they're going to end up back on Carolina's roster. It's just very mysterious what's going on. But the 3 new guys for Carolina that are no longer with the program, the most significant one in terms of name, if you go back to the offseason, is Price Yates. The defensive end steps away from Carolina. That one seems to be more injury-related than anything. William Boone also seems to be an injury-related thing as part of the reason why he is stepping away from the team. And then finally, Yasser Smith, a true freshman tight end, a guy who was originally recruited to Carolina as a defensive end, as an edge rusher, and transitioned over to tight end, a position that he played a little bit in high school. When it comes to Yasser, no offense to him. I mean, he's a true freshman. Carolina at the tight end position, pretty stacked. Not much of an impact. The other 2 little more impactful. William Boone, I think it's pretty clear now that the injury that he suffered was going to probably be season ending. So there's a good chance that he wouldn't have played with the team regardless. But this is two more injured guys that are stepping away from the program. One of them might be because of a long-term issue and the overall long-term health. But I don't think that's necessarily the case for William Boone, and it's starting to bring up some questions as to what exactly is going on.
Yeah, because you go back to reports that have surfaced whenever these reporters have gone digging into the Carolina program. And, you had some guys that in the spring were basically turned away from the facility because they were injured. Oh, and that was what was reported. None of that's really been confirmed, but these are coming from people that within the Carolina community, the college football community. I know you and I put a lot of stock value in terms of trusting them and what they are reporting. And so you would hope that's not the case. You would hope that Carolina is not basically kicking players out of the program because they are injured, but it's something that I do think is very much on the table for two of those guys. Maybe for Yates, it just feels more like, hey, this is going to be a long-term issue. Let me go rehab and figure out what my next step is going to be in my football journey. But for the other two guys, it kind of feels like, hey, okay, you're injured, but why are you leaving the team? Why are you leaving the program without officially entering the portal? Now, again, that could just be a semantics thing because Bill Belichick has not been fired. And I don't think you can enter the portal unless your coach either fires or gets retired or quits during the year. And maybe these guys are just getting a head start on the portal process, but can't officially announce such a thing. Regardless, it just doesn't look good that this happens the week after, Belichick and Lombardi were, basically putting Band-Aids on what happened 2 weeks ago. And you're trying to send this message of commitment and continuity, and three players, for whatever reason, leave the program. And it's just another example of like the bad news or the distractions or whatever it is you want to call it. Like it doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped since he's got hired. And it's continued on even to where we are now, where Carolina's gone through 2 bye weeks that were very chaotic. They were very hectic. Carolina played, it's now almost a week ago, and you've had some stuff still come out. Some of it, to the defense of Carolina with the Chandler Morris stuff, but then you have this stuff here where three more players leave the program, and so it's kind of hard to figure out what's real and what's not. Regardless, I don't think it's best optically for Carolina that 3 more players decided to pack their bags and go somewhere else.
Yeah, the most concerning one is Boone. That's the one to me that I think you look at and you kind of wonder, is this another example? And look, the reason that I'm rolling with this, I know that some of the reports from The Athletic, and I mean, we can mention it when it comes to Chandler Morris here coming up. Hell, we could just mention it right now that, the reports about him potentially seeking out a position, with Carolina this year as the starting quarterback. Apparently that's been proven false by asking Bill Belichick in the press conference. Belichick said we've had no contact. The thing that's more interesting is that you've heard from Chandler Morris, and he said, no, I didn't reach out to them at all. That was not part of the plan this year. So, from some of those national writers, yes, I understand the hesitance. But when it comes to the guys not being able to return to the team back in the spring when they had injuries, that stuff's been confirmed by Tar Heel 24/7. And that's a source that I really do trust. So to me, it makes a lot of sense that this could be a similar type of situation for William Boone. We'll just have to see ultimately what happens, because his agent came out and quoted the tweet from Inside Carolina about him no longer being with the team and said that he will be ready for spring practice. He suffered, an injury in the game against Richmond, and that he will be ready for spring practice. Now, the thing is does that mean he's going to be ready for spring practice with Carolina? Or does that mean that he's going to be ready for spring practice with another team? That's what I think we ultimately have to determine. The Price Yates stuff, I think that one's probably the most impactful because you felt like, and you saw it a little bit in the game against Clemson, he clearly wasn't 100%. And if he did end up suffering another concussion, which is what the issues that he was dealing with, that was what he dealt with just to start this season. That's the reason he was off the field for the first 4 games before joining the team in the Clemson game. And that's the reason he was off the field for the first 6 games of last year. So even if he was back out, even though he was back out there, may have been a little bit hesitant in terms of going 100% and all that, even still much more impactful, it felt like, than some of the guys that we've seen out there this year. Still had a tackle for loss, had three total tackles while playing limited snaps. So he's a guy that you really felt good about, and you thought, man, if Carolina can get him back at any point during this season, they've got a real chance to be able to rush the passer a little bit more consistently than they have so far. The other concern is that with the fact that we now know that William Boone is not going to be with the team the rest of the year, now the depth at left tackle is a little thin. Because remember that you lost a guy that played left tackle earlier in the season in Trevion Green. He's gone as well. So now this means that Carolina, if they suffer an injury there, the only guy that has any experience playing at that left tackle spot is Aiden Buchanan. That's the guy that's going to back up Austin Blaske, who, by the way, hasn't exactly been perfect since he's been out there after returning from injury. So that's a little bit concerning as well, because you would have to start a true freshman. Now, this is a guy that did end up winning the starting job in the game against TCU, so maybe that is something that you can hang your hat on, but that would put a lot of responsibility on him. And then, God forbid, there was another injury. I don't even know where Carolina ends up going at the tackle spot. There's a good chance that Chad Lindbergh has to go from center, kick out to tackle, and then you'd have to have Christo Kelly probably slide in there at the center position. So some of the depth stuff, we thought this offensive line pretty deep because of all the guys that they got in the offseason, not necessarily looking as deep as it was then. All right, guys, let's move on to our preview. But before we do that, let's tell you about Legacy Arcade. That is our sponsor here for the podcast. And you can go over, use that QR code right there, put in the promo code HEELS for up to $100 in free play. And you may be asking, what is Legacy Arcade exactly? Well, it's Legacy Arcade and Social Casino. It's a place where you can win cash prizes with roulette, blackjack, your favorite slot games, and multiplayer fish games. You can also win cash prizes playing your favorite arcade games. Use the promo code HEELS and get up to $100 in free play at registration. It's safe, secure, and has 24-hour customer support, so no matter what time of day you want to play, you'll always have that customer support there if you need it. If you win, you get instant redemption back to your bank account or card that you use. Accepts all major credit cards, Skrill and ACH. The most important one there, of course, being all major credit cards. So no matter what card you have, you can use it there. And they do have Apple Pay that is coming soon. That is going to be huge for you, for those of you like me that really like to use Apple Pay, make it very simple. But this is a cool way to play. As I said, we're guys that really like blackjack. We're also guys that are interested in some of your favorite arcade games. You can play some of those on there, put a little money down on it, and have a little bit of fun. Of course, when it comes to the promo code, the reason we want you to use it is because it helps us, guys. That's what they're using to determine whether or not they're going to keep us or keep on with us here during the rest of the season and on into the off season. So we really encourage you, please use that promo code when you go there. That helps us out. All right, guys, let's move to our preview for tonight, and that would be the Virginia Cavaliers. It's the 130th rendition of the South's oldest rivalry. Carolina leads the all-time series 66-59-4. They are the barely more successful team. And this one actually the closest of all the rivalries that Carolina has in terms of their margin between wins and losses. So this is one that I think a lot of people really underscore when you talk about Carolina's best rivalries. You really look at Duke, NC State as the rivalries that matter the most, and especially NC State here as of recently. But I do think that there is a place for the South's oldest rivalry. You know, we've been guys that have had to debate this on air with some of our hosts over at WFNZ because they don't necessarily get it. But why do you think, just really quickly before we get into this year's actual game, why are you someone that thinks that this rivalry is important? Because to me, I'm right there with you. I think this is one that should be played every single year.
Yeah, I mean, because when you look at college football and you look at the bloodline of the sport, it's the rivalry games. It's that tops even the pageantry, the tradition, and all the other things that make college football college football. But the bread and butter are the rivalry games. And yes, I think like we naturally had more, I think, animosity towards an NC State or maybe a Duke. But like for you and I think for Carolina fans, like when I was growing up, this program was not winning at Virginia. They were in a drought that was pretty historic. And then you look at, some of the best seasons this program's ever had. What has been a team that's derailed those seasons? It's been Virginia. It happened in Mac Brown 1.0. It happened with Mac Brown 2.0. And so, it felt like the one year, those years where you're dreaming big, here comes little old Virginia. And then they're dashing dreams of competing for a conference championship, maybe even some years a national championship. And then, if you read some of the history and Lee Pace did a pretty good job this week, I think, telling some stories of the rivalry. You look at the way that, how Scott Stadium was built. Kenan Stadium was built just right after that, and they were going to almost design the stadium the exact same way, but they didn't want to. That's why they don't look the way that they look. So there are these two programs, despite them not being football juggernauts, this rivalry matters, and it's why that Auburn and Georgia had to name their rivalry something different because Carolina and Virginia had theirs taken with the South's oldest rivalry. So. We get mocked for defending this rivalry. But again, it's something that I think if only you're a Carolina fan, God forbid you're a Virginia fan, you only understand because it's something that is unique to two schools that don't have a lot of football history or tradition. But this rivalry is rooted in the South, and it's one that matters to myself, and I know you as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there isn't nearly the hostility between the two sides, as you mentioned. But this is still, I mean, it's one of the longest standing rivalries in the entire sport. And so to me, I really do believe that this is one that should be played every single year. Yeah, it might not be nearly as important as Duke and NC State. If you told me, look, we have to drop one of the three, of course, this is the one that I'm dropping out of the three. But I do think there's a place for it in this conference. And I do think that that's part of the history of this conference. And you mentioned it, Lee Pace has done a great job of telling the story of the history of this rivalry this week. And, hopefully this is going to be another historic chapter. I mean, Carolina, this is a chance for them to come in and pull an upset. Something that Virginia has done to them multiple times. Now they get a chance to turn it around on Virginia, something that Carolina hasn't necessarily had many chances to do because, especially during our lifetime, we've never really seen Virginia be that good. But this Virginia team certainly is. And so here's all you need to know about Virginia for this year. It starts with the fact that they are 6-1. And 3-0 in conference. And so far, I mean, yeah, the win over Florida State is the most notable one on their schedule. That win not necessarily looking the same that it did earlier in the season. But Florida State probably closer to Carolina than it is to the top of the conference. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think they're probably one of the three worst teams in the conference after getting beat by Stanford earlier or getting beat by Stanford back on Saturday. And so, Yeah, I mean, this one, Virginia is a team that rolls in here feeling good. They're going to make a bowl game this year no matter what, even if they completely collapse. So that's a step in the right direction for their program. But I don't know if we know exactly how good they are. The thing is, though, is that if you go by the statistics, this offense that Carolina faces on Saturday is the best that they've faced all season long, because this team is averaging 40 points per game. They're averaging 462.3 yards of total offense, 258.4 passing yards per game, and 203.9 rushing yards per game. I believe that is the most rushing yards per game of any opponent that Carolina has faced so far this season, which is really saying something. It all starts at quarterback for them. Chandler Morris coming in as a transfer. He's been incredibly successful, and he is a guy that might not need the extra motivation that, we thought that there was going to be for this game. That angle might not be there for him, but he's still coming into the game having a very successful season so far this year. He's thrown for 1,607 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Now, one thing that is notable is he got banged up a little bit in the game against Washington State. Didn't end up coming out of the game, but our friend who works for the, of course, WFNZ, but also the CW on the sidelines, Wes Bryant, said that he looked like he was favoring his shoulder, but there was never a point where he came out, so they couldn't really get an update on that. That would be something that is certainly worth watching going into this game because he is a guy that is a little bit mobile. He's, someone that if he does have a shoulder injury, regardless of which shoulder, but especially if it's the throwing shoulder, then it could mess up some of his mechanics. That's certainly something to watch going into this matchup. And we'll see if he's on the availability report. I'll actually check that here in a minute once I get through the offense. But you go to the running back spot, tons of talent here. Jamari Taylor, who's a transfer from NC Central. He is coming off of a successful career down there and has transferred up and is having a really strong year here at the FBS level, at the Power 4 level at that. 512 yards, 8 touchdowns so far this year on just 108 carries. So he's been very successful out of the gate. The thing is that, even if you get past those guys, there's 3 other running backs that can affect the game for Virginia. They've got Xavier Brown, who's got 241 yards rushing and a touchdown this year. Harrison Wiley, who's got 253 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns. And Noah Vaughn, who actually returns to the lineup after being out for a little bit due to injury. He has 170 yards on just 22 carries. So an explosive player that Carolina has to be aware of on the in that backfield. They've got 3 different receivers so far this year: Trell Harris, Cam Ross, and Jamal Edrin, who are all over 300 yards receiving. So they spread the ball around. There's not really one guy that you have to focus in on. It's everybody that you've got to be able to take away, because any of the receivers can hurt you on any given day. Also worth watching, tight end Sage Ennis, who only has 7 catches so far this year, but 3 of them are for touchdowns. So he's a red zone threat for them. The offensive line is graded out really well as a run blocking unit, anchored by right guard Drake Metcalf and left guard Noah Josie. But they have given up 61 total quarterback pressures in the first 7 games of the year. It's not terrible, but it's certainly not great either. They have allowed a little bit of pressure so far. The good news for them is that the offensive line has only been credited with allowing 1 sack so far this year. So even though they are giving up those pressures, it hasn't led to a lot of success for the teams on the other side. You look at this Virginia offense, I said it, this is probably the best offense that Carolina's played so far this year. And TCU's got a really good offense too. We've seen them be explosive at times. But this group's a little bit different, especially with how they're able to run the ball. So this will be a little bit of a different challenge for Carolina in this game.
Yeah, this is how good Virginia has been offensively in 2025. Clemson fans now want Tony Elliott to come back and not be their play caller, but be the new head coach, and they fired Dabo Swinney. And I'm not joking. I've seen Clemson fans with that rhetoric with what they're where they're at and with where Virginia is at. We've had a chance to see Virginia a couple times. Watched the game against Florida State, watched the game against NC State. Had to watch the end of the game last week against Washington State. What stands out is they got a veteran quarterback that's just been around a while, but they've got just dynamic, explosive playmakers in the run game. Jamari Taylor might be the best running back in college football no one knows about unless you watch ACC football. He's been that good, but they've got a quartet of backs that, if they've got to give that person the rock, they can be a productive ball carrier. Then they've got, 3 receivers that that you got to account for. And so what they really do is they just put so much pressure on the defense because virtually everybody that's on the field, you've got to account for them in one way or another. And you mentioned Chandler Morris is mobile. He's twitchy. He can pull the ball down and run. That's why, he's been pressured 61 times, but only been, they've only given up 1 sack, so far this season because he can make plays with his legs. Which, now will does Carolina have to come in a linebacker or, what do you do with that? So, Tony Elliott, this is probably the best coaching job right now we're seeing in the sport. With where this program was when he got there, with some of the off the field, tragedies that program suffered, to where they are right now, where they're a bona fide ACC threat. They're a bona fide playoff team. Like we're gonna be talking about them as a potential playoff team going, and when we get the rankings next Tuesday. So, and it all starts with what they've done on the offensive side of the ball because they put up points, they put up yards, and so for a Carolina defense that took a step in the right direction last week, we're really going to find out, just how much progress they've made because this is by far, I agree with you, the best offense Carolina has seen so far in 2025.
Yeah, and look, this team, I think they've got so many different weapons as we've talked about. The good news for Carolina is that they will not have to face Cam Ross. The availability report just came out. Cam Ross, the wide receiver, is out for this game. That's huge. We'll also tell you how important that is in special teams as well. The team also without Xavier Brown at that running back position. But as we mentioned, there's so many different guys there that it probably won't matter. They still will be able to have a decent amount of guys that are going to be able to help them back there. Noah Vaughn, as we said, returning to the lineup is going to be huge for them. Also notable, Dakota Twitty, the starting tight end, the leading receiving tight end, is out for this game as well. And Andre Green Jr., the former Tar Heel wide receiver, he's only got 1 catch for 7 yards so far this year, but that's another guy that I think people always worry about. The revenge factor, going up against a team like Virginia that has some former Tar Heel guys on it, he won't be active for this game either. So they are dealing with some injuries on their side. Maybe that helps Carolina a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see. Still a ton of talent on that offense. You're still going to see Chandler Morris, who's not listed on the availability report at all, so it looks like he's good to go. Jamari Taylor, has been, as you said, one of the more underrated backs in all of college football this year. I mean, he's a guy, I get they're 7 games into the season, but he's a guy that's going to be approaching that 1,000-yard mark as the season goes along. And so, yeah, there's a lot to really like about this offense for Virginia. You go over to the defensive side of the ball, averaging 23.3 points per game allowed to the opponent, 352.7 yards of total offense allowed, 231.9 passing yards allowed, and just 120.9 rushing yards allowed. The defensive line is anchored by 2 edge rushers in Mitchell Milton and Daniel Rickert, who are both having tremendous seasons in terms of the amount of pressure that they're getting on the quarterback. They are finishing these off. I mean, Rickert with 4.5 sacks so far this year. Milton, 6.5 tackles for loss. So he's been, involved in both the run and the passing game. The interior defensive line sees a lot of rotation, and they've had some solid play, as you can tell by that rushing yards number, especially in that run game. And then, You look at the linebackers, James Jackson, Cam Robinson. Cam Robinson missed some time early in the season. They've got him back. He's certainly a guy that they really feel is one of the better linebackers in this conference. And James Jackson, very solid too. So one of the better linebacking cores that Carolina is going to face all year long. Then you get to the secondary, a little bit hit and miss back there. You got some pieces that are really shining, like safety Devin Neal and nickel corner Deshaun Prevard. But you do have two corners in Donovan Platt and Jordan Robinson who have been picked on at times this year on the outside. So maybe that's an area that Carolina is able to take advantage of, looking the direction of Kobe Paysour, Jordan Shipp. Those are guys that hopefully will be able to free themselves up in this game. Maybe even Chris Culliver over the top and hit a big play there. Platt has been the guy that has struggled the most, allowed over 300 yards receiving so far this year and 3 touchdowns. So you look at this defense, not a super intimidating defense, but not a defense that's awful either. I think it's just a middle-of-the-road defense. It's a group that plays the run really well. Maybe you can throw the football on them a little bit, but here's the challenge. Carolina's quarterbacks not exactly playing up to snuff for a successful team in the ACC. So if they're going to be able to take advantage of that, it's up to the quarterbacks to be able to play better against the defense that might give them some opportunities.
They have the look in the field defensively of what we wanted Carolina to be when Mac Brown was here. And you had a explosive, dynamic offense, which is what Virginia has. And you've got a defense that, is it top tier? No, but it's not bottom tier. They're going to let you move the football, but then, when the field shrinks, they're going to condense what they're doing. They're going to get after the quarterback, and they're going to hold you to field goals. And they're not going to let you run the football on them. And so, that makes you one-dimensional, and I think Carolina's going to have to move the football in the air. If they want to have a chance to win, they're going to have to push the football down the field quite in ways that they haven't done so far this season, just because I don't know if they'll be able to run the ball the way that they want to be able to run the ball with Devon June, Davian Goss, Benjamin Hall, and all those guys in the backfield. So, their defense isn't intimidating, but they're not gonna do anything that's gonna beat them. They're gonna keep the ball in front of them. They're gonna rally to it. They're gonna make tackles. They're opportunistic when it comes to creating turnovers. And so it's the right kind of defense for what they know they have in their offense. And so that's a big reason why they are where they are, is because like last week when the offense sputtered, the defense kept them in the ball game and allowed them to make the comeback in the fourth quarter. And they've played more complimentary football than I think most people have realized, and that's why Carolina's going to have their hands full. When we were talking about this game back in the preseason, I'm not going to say we said thank you next, but we thought this was going to be a clear-cut, definite win for Carolina. That's not going to be the case. They're going to have their hands full with this Virginia team on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, look, I knew Virginia was going to be better. I thought they were a team that could challenge to make a bowl game this year. But we thought this was a game at home. We thought Carolina, being coached by Bill Belichick, would have the coaching advantage. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Again, Tony Elliott is a guy that is, primarily focused on the offensive side of the ball. That has been the most successful side of this team. I think their offense is going to pose one of the biggest challenges to Carolina that they faced all year long. But this defense is sneaky, man. They've got some guys that can take away the ball. Deshaun Prevard is a guy that has 3 interceptions already so far this year. Devin Neal's a guy that's has a takeaway as well. They've created some turnovers this year on the back end. So, yeah, Carolina, I think, has a chance to be able to attack certain areas of this defense, especially this secondary. But they've got to be calculated in the moments that they're going after some of these guys. And it's up to Gio Lopez to be, better than he's been so far this year. Again, we've talked about it. You've got to be able to throw with anticipation. You've got to be accurate with the football. When you have those moments against this defense, you've got to be able to take advantage of them. No one has done it really consistently against them. That's why this team is 6-1 so far this year. But if you are consistent in taking those opportunities that they're going to give you from time to time, then you stand a chance of being able to win this game. You go to the special teams, Will Bettridge, one of the most productive kickers in college football this season. Daniel Sparks is back from injury, one of the best punters in the country. And really, I mean, this unit was as good as just about any in the country coming into this matchup before we got the news about Cam Ross. I mean, Cam Ross, as dangerous of a kick returner as you're going to get in the entire country. I mean, averaging 41.4 yards per return on kickoffs, on punts, averaging just over 10 yards per return. So he's been very productive so far this year. Now, with him out, they're going to have to look to some other guys. It could be Cameron Courtney is a guy that they've had return a kick so far this year that has been successful. He's also returned a punt, so maybe that's who they turn to ultimately. Also, Jamari Taylor, the starting running back, is a guy that can be a factor there as well. So they'll be juggling some things. That's certainly something that Carolina has a little bit of an advantage with the injuries that they're dealing with. They'll be juggling some things, but certainly that this is still a special teams unit that is very dangerous that Carolina has to be aware of. Go to the Tar Heel storylines for this game. And I think the biggest storyline to start out is, can this team build off of some of the small steps that they took in Berkeley? Mainly, what are the things that they can build off of that they did against the Cal Golden Bears? Because you look, and there were some things that you really liked. I thought Carolina ran the football relatively well in that game. That's something that you're hoping can carry over. Now, this defense going to be a little bit tougher to be able to run against, but still, I do think that's something that Carolina is going to want to do in this game early to sort of set up their offense, allow Gio Lopez to settle into the game. This is where you've got three backs. You've got a chance to really see who out of this three is in line to have a successful night. Maybe this is where Damon June is a guy that you turn back to and he has success. Maybe this is Davian Goss's breakout game this season where he's really able to take over. Or maybe Benjamin Hall's able to build off of what he did. Gio Lopez, is he able to improve off of what he was doing in the game against Cal? We saw some moments where he was a little bit better throwing the football, especially down the field. We saw some of those timing routes that were a little bit better from him. Can he build off of that? And then just overall, can this defense build off of the performance that they had, tackling wise? In terms of the yards for after catch, can they find a way to limit those in this game? I think those are some of the things that you look at and you wonder, can Carolina build off of them in this game against Virginia? Even though Virginia is good, Carolina at home, maybe they can build off of some of what they did last week and continue to, prop up the vibes a little bit around this program.
Yeah, for me, it's all about what do they replicate defensively from last week to this week, because last week the box score would suggest that Carolina should have won the ball game. You gave up less than 300 yards of total offense. You gave up 80 yards on the ground, and Cal was 6 of 16 on third down. Most of the time, those box scores lose. But what was the big difference? We talked about this in the recap. 4 of those 6 third down conversions were on 3rd and 8 and longer, including a 3rd and 18. And so that's something that you think you want to see Carolina clean up. But I think it really starts there, and this kind of feeds into it. Last week was the first time against power conference competition it felt like Carolina played Bill Belichick football. Like they played complementary football. They played field position at different points in times because the defense kept them in it. That's something that he was great at doing when he was in New England. That hasn't carried over to the college game right now. So you're gonna have to make sure that you make the most of if you get short fields, but not give the opponent too many short fields because they're a big play offense. So that's what I really look at. What defensively carries over, and then can you play a similar style of complementary football, offense, defense, and the special teams like you did a week ago that could maybe keep you in the game, make it a one-possession game in the fourth quarter, because all the pressure then will be on Virginia. Like if Carolina can just hang around in this game, kind of like what Virginia did 2 years ago when they came into our building, we were number 10 in the country and they beat us. Can you flip the script on them? This is a program that's never been there. This is a coaching staff that's never been in that situation. And I think that needs to be the message to this team all week long. And so That's what I'm looking at the most, because if Carolina can do those two things and we get into the fourth quarter and it's, 21-17, maybe, just maybe, we see Virginia make a mistake or two they haven't made so far this season, and Carolina can get that defining win in year one under Bill Belichick.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, main thing that you got to see carry over is what Carolina was able to do on first and second down. They were able to win those downs, and it put Cal in those third and long situations. Now, you got to be able to get off the field in those moments. We talked about that the other night, about how important that is and how Carolina needs to be better there. Really, I think for them in those circumstances, finding a true pass rusher that can win up front, win consistently, and be able to get pressure on the quarterback, God forbid, be able to consistently sack the quarterback, I think that would be a huge help for Carolina. But just getting to those third downs are important. You want to make sure that you have Virginia in those third and long situations, make Chandler Morris win the game with his arm, because we know that this rushing game is capable of winning the game for them on the ground. I mean, they're running for over 200 yards per game. I'm not saying that Chandler Morris has been bad, but you want to put the football in his hands and make him make these plays for Virginia on these third down situations. So that'll be key for Carolina in this matchup. Offensively, I think really just establishing some sort of rhythm. And then when you get in the red zone, you have to be scoring touchdowns in this game. This is going to be one of those ones where if you're going to win, you're probably going to have to get to the 30-point mark. And I don't know if Carolina's necessarily capable of doing that. I mean, they still are a team that against FBS opponents so far this year, they have not scored more than 20 in a game. That is a crazy stat to believe, but that's where Carolina is at so far this year. So, I mean, for them, they are going to have to make it a little bit ugly. Maybe 30 is a little bit too much, but if they can get into the mid-20s, that gives them at least a chance to win this game. You brought up something that I had as one of the other storylines here real quickly. Can the Tar Heels avenge the 2023 upset? I mean, look, there's maybe a handful of guys that are still on the roster from that team. A lot of the roster turnover, a lot of the graduations that Carolina's had over the last couple of years have taken away just about every significant contributor. But you're right. This feels very similar, where Virginia is in a position that they haven't really been in. I mean, for Carolina, at least the year before, Carolina was successful as well. And then, of course, fell apart late in the year, that year as well. But, I mean, yeah, this is something that is new for Virginia. They're going to come in here with pretty much no pressure on their shoulders. This could be one of those games where they're potentially overlooking Carolina, and can Carolina take advantage of them the way that they did back in 2023, when it seemed like Carolina was overlooking a team with Tony Muskett at quarterback that wasn't necessarily great. I think there is, an element of that in this game. I think this one could be a little bit closer than maybe some people think, based off of what we saw last week, where this team showed a little bit of fight. But, I mean, yeah, it's going to take a lot for Carolina to be able to find a way to reverse that upset and pull that same type of rabbit out of their hat in this year's matchup.
Yeah, I'd love to see it happen, because as someone that was, in Keenan in 2022, when Carolina lost to Georgia Tech, that Virginia loss, I think, hits different, because you quite literally didn't see that one coming. If y'all were with us in 2022, you and I really argued about how good that team was, because they won a lot of one-possession games against bad teams. And I told you at some point it was going to cost them, and it eventually did. In 2023, that was not the case. Carolina did a really good job beating teams, and beating teams soundly. They thoroughly, outplayed a South Carolina team in the opener. They beat Miami very handedly at home. There were some other results that led you to believe that maybe that group was finally for real and they weren't going to do what they do best, which is disappoint us. And then Virginia happened, and it was as quiet a ride back home we've had during our time going to Carolina games. So I'd love to get one back. I think, and as much as as anything, I just want it for these kids, man. Like, they've been through so much with just because they play here and they play for a head coach that people are very interested in, and they're really interested in trying to tear him down. This locker room's been through a lot, and so I would like for them to have that kind of moment. And it's going to be difficult because I do think Virginia is really, really good, but these are rivalry games. Crazy things happen. We've seen bad Virginia teams beat good Carolina teams. There's no reason why a bad or below average Carolina team can't do the same thing against Virginia on Saturday afternoon. And I'm excited to see there because I think this game is going to be closer than most people are willing to admit right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's how this rivalry is always really shaped up. I think one of the other big things that you've got to wonder about this game, and I'll be real interested to see, is the last Tar Heel storyline that I have here, and will Carolina be able to match the intensity of Virginia in this rivalry? Because you look at the last, handful of years, we've talked about it. This game seems to mean more to Virginia than it means to Carolina. These kids really come into this game and buy into the rivalry aspect of it, and it's led to some upsets by Virginia, or, some games that weren't even necessarily upsets, but sprung, special seasons for Virginia, including back in 2019. So, I mean, yeah, for Carolina, I think it's just you're interested to see, will there be more intensity from a Bill Belichick group in a rivalry game? We've talked about how we think that Duke game is really going to mean a lot to him because he talked about how his first words would be Duke. His dad was coaching during a time where Duke was very clearly Carolina's biggest rival in football, the biggest threat to Carolina in football. And then NC State, I think that's one that's just going to be learned as we go along, if it hasn't already. I'll be interested to see if it looks different, if there's a level of intensity that maybe we haven't seen so far this year in this game against Virginia. But I mean, yeah, that's one thing that hopefully they can harken back to is that 2023 game, even though they didn't play in that game, maybe there are a couple of teammates that are still on the team that remember that. And some of these guys can buy in on trying to become a team that pulls an upset this year. I mean, that's the thing. Carolina is going to be in that spot in a lot of their games the rest of the season, a chance to pull an upset over a team that's going to be better than you. This one's against a team that's ranked and a team that I'm not, they've done a good job so far this year. It's not like they're skirting by teams, Virginia, but that pressure is going to start to set in just a little bit for the Cavaliers as the season goes along. This could be one of those games where maybe they don't expect it to be that competitive of a game, and Carolina is able to get it done. Now, here's the ultimate question that we have to ask, and especially because of where we sit for this game. Is this a field storming worthy game if Carolina ends up winning this game?
That's
you were not happy when they beat a top 10 Wake Forest team back in 2021. So does this one count as one that would make sense if they storm the field?
I would say yes. And the reason why I argued against storming the field against Wake Forest was 1/6 of Carolina's all-time wins in football have come against Wake Forest. Like, there aren't many birthrights we have as Carolina football fans. By God, I expect to beat Wake Forest's ass. So, I mean, they could have God playing quarterback. I expect to win. I'm never surprised when we beat them. This is a rivalry game. This is, in this first time back in your building after they derailed your season a few years ago. This is a very contested rivalry. It's a very close rivalry in terms of the standings. And this would be the first. You almost need to storm the field so Belichick and Lombardi have something to sell. Because, whenever you go in these coaches' offices, if you ever get a chance to, and you look at the photos down the hallway or in there, there's going to be a photo or two if there's been a field storming for that coach. It's going to be there. And they're going to be able to sell that moment to that recruit, to that kid. And so, I would say yes. I mean, considering where we stand, we could probably get to the field. I would consider storming the field.
Oh, very quickly.
So yeah, I would say this one registered registers because it's a rival. It's a ranked rival, and it could be something that if this Bill Belichick experiment turns around and becomes a positive, we point back to that game and say that's where it turned around, kind of like for Tony Elliott this time at Virginia. So, yes, I would say Carolina wins. You better storm the field.
Yeah, I would say definitely pro field storming for this game. I mean, this is a team that's ranked inside of the top 25. They're ranked, 16th, I believe, in the AP poll this week. That is high enough where you should be able to storm the field. I get it. You have had success against Virginia at certain times in your in the rivalry. But to me, I think especially with what happened in 23, where they derailed what at the time, most people, I mean, it's still unbelievable. It was a perfect season, guys. They were 6-0 out of the game and had beaten some legitimately good teams. And Virginia derailed that entire season. Carolina finished that season 8-5. You better storm the field in this game. But again, you got to be able to beat this team. This is going to be a big challenge. But still, I was pro storm back in 2021. I thought that was the right thing to do against a team that was ranked inside of the top 10, would play in the ACC championship. I think Carolina did the right thing in that game. And I do think that if they end up winning this game, you will see students and fans on the field, including possibly us. Now, the other thing is if the game gets bad enough, will we be amongst the guys if Carolina does it where the stands clear out? We've seen it at Oklahoma State. We've seen it at Wisconsin this year. Will we be the guys that will take our shirts off and swing them around our heads like crazy people in one section if there is a group of guys that ends up doing that?
No, nobody wants to see this body without clothes on.
Have you seen some of the other people that have been doing this? I don't think that we will necessarily be shamed.
Yeah, I only get naked or topless after Carolina Panther wins. If Heels could be down 58-0, I'll be sitting there with my shirt on.
All right. I thought we'd try. I mean, they did have it at Charlotte here last week where they did it as well. So there's been a lot of schools around the country where this is a trend, but apparently you don't want to have fun. So it's all good. We'll figure it out from there, but it'll be interesting. Hopefully we don't have to worry about that. Hopefully Carolina puts up a competitive fight in this game and gives us a chance to avenge that loss from 2023. All right, let's get to our keys to the game and then pick the game here. Keys to the game, I think the first key to the game, one, and this is what we talked about the other night, and it's so crucial in this game too. You know, we talked about creating turnovers, and I do think that's something that Carolina's got to do if they're going to pull an upset against a ranked team. But more importantly, they got to take care of the football. Because even if you do create those turnovers, if you give the ball back, that's ultimately not going to mean anything. Carolina, in the game against Cal, you had two incredibly impactful fumbles that basically lost you the game. One that really lost you the game because Carolina would have had a chance to take the lead at that point. Who knows if Cal ends up driving the field and scoring on them. But still, Carolina had a chance to take a lead for the first time against a power conference opponent this year outside of the first drive against TCU, and unfortunately fumbled it away. You've got to be able to hold on to the football in this one. Don't give this Virginia offense extra opportunities, because if you do, you are going to get blown out in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to maximize every possession that you have because Carolina's margin for error is not very big. They've got to play almost as perfect to a game as they can play moving forward. They want to win games and get back in the conversation to go to a bowl game. And you can't have too many zeros with possessions because Virginia is going to move the ball and they're going to put points up. Like, you've got to keep pace with them. You've got to score with them. So, last week the two fumbles were the difference in the ball game. This week, those two fumbles could be the difference in you being in a one-possession game in the fourth quarter or being blown out in the middle of the third quarter and Kenan Stadium is empty again. So that's where it starts and ends with this group. Belichick talked about that in his press conference earlier this week. You imagine that was heightened importance in the week of practice leading up to this game. Carolina cannot afford to turn the ball over, give that explosive offense short fields. to put points on the board because they're not equipped to play a shootout with the Cavaliers.
The second key to the game that I have is protect Gio Lopez. And I think part of that is because you look at this pass defense. I think that's the one area of this defense that you really can attack. We've seen that when he is not pressured, Gio Lopez is certainly much better than he is than when he has pressure on him. I mean, it's not the most unbelievable thing. It's not mind-blowing because that's really any quarterback, but especially Gio so far this year. You saw it in that Cal game, man. When he had time to throw, he was able to stand in there, find some guys in that intermediate and deep passing game. I think you're going to have to be able to do that in this game as well. You're not going to be able to dink and dunk your way down the field and find success against an explosive offense like this. So I think you have to be able to protect Gio Lopez, something they have not done here since that game against Central Florida. They haven't protected any of their quarterbacks, and they got to be better at doing that.
Yeah, no doubt, because you're hoping it's in the game plan to push the football down the field and really try to exploit a secondary that is, suspect to giving up yards. That's only possible if Carolina can hold up in pass protection. There is gonna be the quick game. It's an extension of their run game. It's where they get Gio Lopez in rhythm and build some confidence within himself. But they got to push the football down the field, and the only way he can do that is if he has time to stand in the pocket and make some throws. Hopefully this offensive line that, feels like every week there's something new to it because of an injury or someone coming back from injury, so on and so forth. They can do a really good job and give him a chance because, before that fumble, Gio Lopez was on the verge of leading his most important drive as Carolina's quarterback, and that would have really took his confidence to a level that, quite frankly, we haven't seen it at so far this season. That kind of goes all to the wayside once Leacock fumbles the football and Carolina doesn't get it back. But regardless, yes, you've got to be competitive up front in the trenches because I feel like Gio's going to have to throw the ball probably 30, 35 times to give Carolina a chance, and you better hope he has time to make the throws in the pocket as opposed to running around for his life like he's had to a different points against P4 competition.
All right, you go to the third and final key to the game. I think it's limit the passing game for Virginia. And you can do this in a multitude of ways. One is by getting pressure on the quarterback, really affecting how he's able to throw the football. Two, being more aggressive in coverage. Just getting hands on the ball, being able to knock it away. And the third, I think, is, probably one that matters the most, which is create turnovers. Because I don't think you're going to be able to completely take away this passing game. You haven't been able to do it to any of the better passing games that you faced so far this year. Even a struggling passing game like Clemson's, you weren't able to take away. You've got to be able to create some turnovers from Chandler Morris in this game. I know he's done a really good job so far of taking care of the football, but if you're able to create turnovers, maybe you can put the type of pressure that we saw Washington State put on them last week and potentially find a way to pull an upset because, last week they barely escaped that game at home. Maybe Carolina is able to do something similar in this game in Kenan Stadium.
Yeah, and I think if Stephen Belichick brings out the same game plan he brought out last week, it gives Carolina a chance. It's the most aggressive he's been, I believe, with his blitz packages all year, and I thought it was successful. I thought Carolina just played with the different edge defensively because they were being aggressive as opposed to trying to just keep everything in front of them and rally to the football. With that being said, though, you've got to limit the big play, and so this has got to be a game where Carolina's got to do both. They've got to keep the ball in front of them, rally to it, not give up, big chunk plays. But they've also got to be aggressive. Maybe force him to make a mistake or two. He hasn't made too many times so far this season, outside of the loss against NC State, which he had to engineer a comeback last week against Washington State. Maybe look at what they did on film, try to incorporate it in the game plan this week. Maybe try to confuse them with some different coverages and hide some of the blitzes that you're going to send his way. But if Chandler Morris comes out here and has a field day and throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, I don't see a scenario where Carolina wins the game, let alone stays competitive. They've got to make sure he's probably below 250 yards passing and under 3 touchdowns to give themselves a shot.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks that you've faced so far this year. I think definitely in the top three, in the way that he was playing. Before that game against Washington State, you could have made the argument that he was the best that Carolina has faced so far this year in terms of the rhythm that he was in. So Carolina's got to be able to get a little bit of pressure on him, maybe create a turnover or two, and just wreak a little bit of havoc, make him have an off day if you're going to find a way to pull the upset. All right, let's get to the predictions for the game. Carolina against Virginia, 12 o'clock. ACC network, I'm wanting to say. Yes. What do you think ultimately will happen?
Yeah, look, man, I'd love to come on here and predict a win. I think it would be fun to be in that stadium, get to be in that environment, and derail what's becoming a special season for one of our rivals. I don't see it happening. I think Virginia is too good. They're too talented. They're well coached. And at this rate, with some of the wins they've gotten on their schedule, they probably feel like they're destined for one of those seasons that Virginia fans will be talking about on the grounds of that campus for many years to come. I think Carolina looks the part. I think they look as competitive as they were a week ago, but this is a better football team. I think Virginia wins 34-21.
Yeah, I think Virginia ends up winning this game as well. I think that you just look at what Chandler Morris is doing, what this running game's doing. This offense is just so good. And those are the types of teams that for Carolina, they just can't match up with because they simply cannot score the ball the way that they have in years past. If this was a team that came in here with a struggling offense, they were more of a defensive, grinded out type of team. Those are the teams that Carolina stands a chance against. And you could say, well, you look at Cal, the games that they had won, they were pretty successful offensively. Yes, but I think as Cal's gotten into conference play, you've seen that they are not necessarily as great of an offense as they were in the non-conference season. This team's for real. This team is definitely one of the better offenses in college football. I think it's the toughest one that Carolina's faced this year. And I think they are going to be able to put up some points in this game, if anything, late in the game. I think Carolina might be able to come out, fight with them for about 3 quarters, but I think Virginia probably overwhelms them down the stretch. I have Virginia winning this game over Carolina 34-20 over the Tar Heels. So, again, we're right in the same neighborhood as each other. That one, Carolina doesn't cover. But ultimately, what I think is you leave that game feeling like, okay, this team is going to be able to fight against even some of the better competition that they're going to be facing down the stretch of the season, which is all that you can really hope for the remainder of the year with where this program is at. All right, so that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast, guys. It has been a ridiculous day of podcasts. We have we've had you covered for 3 straight hours, basically. On the with the 4 corners side of things on the first 2 of the 3 leg that we've had going, and then here on the Heel Tough Blog podcast tonight. So if you missed either episode of the 4 Corners podcast, make sure you go back and check that out. You got Ashton's analysis, first time on camera, right, for Ashton. Looking good on camera. First time for him on camera. So get a look at the youngest member of our crew here. Go see how he did in his debut on camera in that edition of the podcast. And then you got a Hubert Davis press conference takeaways edition of the podcast. Not just talking about Luka Bogovat's eligibility, but plenty of other stuff that Hubert talked about yesterday. Josh had you covered on that front. So we are going to be hitting you guys incredibly hard with a lot of these podcasts over the next few weeks as we get close to the start of the season for Carolina and then into the season for Carolina where we will be rolling there as well. So make sure that you guys are following our social media pages and you are subscribed to that YouTube page. That is one of the biggest things, guys, one of the biggest selling points for us when it comes to getting sponsors. We have heard from some people that have said, hey, man, need to get those YouTube numbers up. So if you guys could go over there to the YouTube page, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any editions of the shows whenever they end up coming out. Of course, you can get us on Facebook as well. the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog on Facebook, and then at Heel Tough Blog on Twitter as well. We post every one of the videos on there. We'll give it a repost. And of course, that's where we post all our articles as well. So we suggest go over there, follow it, turn on the post notifications so that whenever we put up a new post, you get that immediately. You'll get a notification right to your Twitter that, hey, the guys over at the Heel Tough Blog have something that they're putting up. So make sure you head over to the website as well. Plenty of stuff on the website when it comes to all the stuff that we're talking about here. The preview will be up sometime tomorrow for you guys. So make sure that you guys are checking that out. That'll have the latest availability report for Carolina. No one important on there, but just in case someone crops up there late, we will, of course, have you covered with that. And then there are some other features that we will be doing and stuff like that, especially recruiting wise. We got 2 articles that are up there about 2 of the official visitors for Carolina this weekend, 2 very big names that are going to be on campus that Carolina is trying to flip, or at least complete a flip. They did have one guy that decommitted from Penn State yesterday that is going to be on campus this week. So make sure that you guys go back, read about that, and then read all of the Carolina basketball content on there as well, including Luka Bogovac being cleared by the NCAA, but now having a new hurdle that he's got to get over involving the school. Read all about that over there on the website if you haven't checked that out. HeelToughBlog.com. So that wraps it up once again for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.